Welcome back to the show this morning. We are talking about working women and how they rank when it comes to pay, the gender gap. Typically, men still make more for the same work, but the trend is slowly but surely shifting, and there is room for women to advance. So how do you do it? Well, Cynthia Good is back from the Little Pink Book. Thank you so much for all your time and advice on the show today.
Pleasure.
Great information. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some tips for women to close the gap, to be leaders, and fearless, and go for it.
Well, and really one of my favorite pieces of advice, Adam, comes from Roz Brewer, who is the CEO of Sam's Club, and she is a local, here in Atlanta, $50 billion a year. That's what Sam's Club does. She's amazing. And she said her piece of advice was take a seat at the table. And the way that translates into confidence, right? You take a seat at the table and you're part of the conversation.
Sure.
Then you look really, really confident. So really it's about, for women especially, but men as well, determining what are the strategic and financial goals of your company or your particular division, and then being part of that conversation, sharing your ideas about how the organization can get to those goals. And once you speak up and you're part of that, it's a lot of fun, and then you're sort of considered on that fast track, I think, to more of a leadership role. That's one thing you can do. It involves taking a lot of risk and putting yourself out there, which we discussed a lot of women are reluctant too often to do.
But you're right. I mean, sitting back and watching it happen is really not going to get you anywhere. I mean, if you actually take a stance and you talk about what you think would be effective and help the company out and come up with an idea or a plan, I mean, they're going to tend to look at you and say, wow, she's got some great ideas.
I was actually in Detroit just a couple of weeks ago speaking at Chrysler, to the women of Chrysler, about that. And we did this whole thing, long, talk, keynote. And one of the young women in the audience after that asked, well, should I speak up? I'm new in the job. I'm entry level. And I said, yes, I just spent 45 minutes talking about it. So go out and do it. We are seeing that women are now almost nearly, the latest McKinsey data, as ambitious as men are. So we want it, but still we find ourselves reluctant to take on higher level roles. And there was one woman, very senior level in a major Fortune 100 company, and her friends, her husband said, do it, do it. She said, no, I've got the kids, I've just got too much going on. I really can't step into that. They said, do it. Finally wore her down. She said it's the best thing she ever did. She's so glad she stepped up and did it.
You brought up an interesting point, Cynthia, and I want to talk about this because women at home as a wife or as a mother, and they're balancing that with their career. And so what is your take on that?
Because, well, you're right. I mean, women are still bearing the bulk of the responsibility at home for their children, for their aging relatives, for taking care of the house. Hopefully we're delegating more and more of that to our partner, but we're still seeing a lot of that, and a lot of women do feel that pressure and oftentimes may throw in the towel. And I think that this is going to be a shift in our own minds, and also in terms of the positioning of corporate America, because the reality is we're living longer than ever. Careers in the 21st century are very long. In the context of a 30-year career, even taking a couple years off to be with your kids, if you take 3 years off, that's so small in the course of a 30-year career. We're seeing organizations like General Mills, for instance, and we interviewed their highest-ranking African-American woman. She took off a number of years when her kids were little, and she was right back in there after that. The company benefited, she benefited. So this notion that, your employees need to be available 24/7 through the duration of your career is just not so logical anymore, and we're going to have to make that shift in order to make it work for everybody.
So what can women do right now to start making the change? I mean, because they have so much to balance. They may want to be the mother that's there for their children, and they also want to lead their company. So what can they do?
Right, and one of the big stories involving women in leadership, Indra Nooyi, CEO of Pepsi, talking about just recently, women can't have it all. That's what she said. But for me, it's really about being very clear about your own priorities. What is the most important thing in your life? And being very intentional about the ranking of what's most important. Your marriage, your kids, your career, or your health needs to go way up there probably too, your friendships, and then, it helps you do that balancing act, because we can't do everything all of the time, but we have to do, what's going to support what's most important.
So one thing you could do then, obviously, is just make a list.
Right.
of your priorities and where you want to be. I mean, set goals for yourself. I'm sure you
Sure.
support that.
And to choose happiness and to do what you're passionate about. And our big mantra at Pink is to have the courage to do what you love, because that kind of passion and enthusiasm definitely translates and will help you find greater success in your work.
And so hopefully women can understand that whether their role is at the office or at home, they can be a leader no matter where they may be working. And by the way, a woman taking care of children at home is a very challenging job.
This is true, and we're also seeing more and more of the men doing it and deciding
That's
that
right.
that's a good fit for them. So, whatever works best for you and your family, I think makes the most sense. And that's hard, though, still, is to put, the expectations that the world has of us aside a little bit and, to follow your own heart, what's right for your own situation. And it changes at various times through a person's life.
I would like to think, though, the role at home is changing. I think, I would like to believe that it's different today, that, there is some shared responsibility between husband and wife, and men doing more around the home, whether it be staying with the children or cleaning the house or whatever it may be. I would like to think, and I don't know if you're seeing that, but I would like to think that we're balancing that a little bit better.
We are, and it's, I think, more acceptable for the man to do those things, and he's being more encouraged. And, the women out there, really important to encourage the guys to do that. We just did one of our Minute Mentor videos on outsourcing. Lois Kemp over at NCR talked about that's what helped her and her family, is to have a support network, just beyond the internal family that can really help you with some of those things. That's key as well.
So if you want to connect with Cynthia Good, again, Cynthia, give us the lowdown on how we can reach you and find more information.
You can find us on littlepinkbook.com, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and definitely hope you can come to the event. Adam, you're invited, November 10th.
Thank you.
It will be at the Intercontinental in Buckhead, and we're going to hear the stories from the women themselves, and that's what's really exciting and very inspiring to hear that.
And how will that event, will it be one day or is it a weekend
It's
event?
just a lunch event. It's
lunch
heavy
event, okay.
networking. One of the most important things that women can do that men are so great is establishing those relationships. People want to do business with people who they think care about them. They want to give promotions to people who they work with, who they feel care. So it's really a chance there to build some of those relationships, and also to hear from some of the most powerful and inspiring women in business to see how they did it, so then you can figure out your own path to success.
Can you give us a taste of any special guests that are going to be there that we might want to see? Are you able to talk about that?
We're talking with some really high-powered women, so you just have to wait. Follow us on Twitter, and we'll announce it as soon as it comes out.
That's fantastic. Cynthia Good, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, Adam.
Great
It's a pleasure.
information, great advice, great work you're doing, too,
Thank
for the
you.
women
Appreciate it.
in society. And stay with us. We'll be back right after this to wrap up the show.